I wish I would learn to stop making announcements about what are my intentions or plans for the future. I always end up changing my mind and going back on what I say. I would rather be using this channel to speak about monastic things and Catholic spirituality, but the outrageous atrocities of Trump's MAGA America and the complicit silence of the United States Catholic prelates, particularly my own Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone, compels me to speak out. Though not currently an official monk as recognized by canon law in the Catholic Church, and admittedly not trying very hard to live such a life in private, I still identify my personal brand of spirituality as Benedictine and rooted in Western Christian monasticism. Part of that tradition characterizes a monk, no matter how cloistered or removed from the world of activism he may be, in the role of a prophet. From my studies of sacred scripture, I have learned that the portrayal of a prophet as merely one who predicts the future is inaccurate. It is true that the prophetic writings in the Hebrew scriptures often speak of a bright future and appear to promise better times ahead. But most of these prophecies consist of harsh criticisms of the time in which the prophet lived. The prophets were openly critical of the corruption of kings and their neglect of the sufferings of the people whom they governed. Jesus was openly critical of the corruption and empty piety of the religious leaders of his time. And just as the prophets often met with a violent end, so did Jesus suffer and was put to death for upsetting both earthly rulers and the religious influencers of the time. Monastic communities of both men and women serve as a contradiction for the world at large. In a world where wealth, fame, power, and prestige are held in high esteem, monks and nuns strive to live in obscurity without personal wealth or worldly power, seeking to love God and neighbor. The stark contrast between what goes on within the quiet walls of a monastic community against the noise and the frantic world outside is by itself a prophetic witness. So far, the cenobitic or communal monastic life has eluded me. Over the past several years, I have come to accept that my current situation, which I did not choose, exists for a purpose. I am not a political activist. I consider myself to be a fairly normal person living within the same limitations which most people share. The most available means I have to raise my voice is through existing social media platforms, including my own YouTube channels. However, the extent of my audience is limited. This Monastic Musings channel has barely 150 subscribers, and rarely do any of my videos receive more than 100 views. And many of these views are only partial views according to the statistics provided by YouTube. I was particularly disappointed in the lackluster response to my Silence of the Goats video, which I posted a month ago. My disappointment deepened when I observed an increase in the traffic of MAGA trolls and bots on Threads. My frustration led me to announce on Threads that I was pulling back from producing YouTube videos and posting on Threads. I was going to focus on other projects and spend less time on social media. Then, Wednesday, August 27th happened. The news of the shooting of school children at Annunciation Church in Minnesota drew out of me great anger and rage. Rage because the site of the shooting was a Catholic church, which made it feel personal. Rage because this event could have been avoided. Rage because MAGA prelates, such as my own Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone, continue to remain silent as yet another atrocity under the regime of the Donald Trump White House occurs. In the days following, I began to construct a script, a monologue, in my head of what I would say in my next video. As days passed, my rage gave way to deep sadness, the kind of sadness I get that results in procrastination and apathy. So I delayed taking up the writings of that script. On the following Sunday, it was widely reported by both secular and Catholic news outlets that Pope Leo, at his Sunday Angelus address, switched from the customary Italian language to English as he delivered his sorrow and condolences on the Annunciation Church shooting. His prayer for the end of the pandemic of weapons was consistently repeated in all headlines. The attention paid by the Associated Press, Reuters, and many prominent media outlets made it impossible for the sometimes selectively deaf EWTN to ignore the speech. A few Catholic bishops joined their voices with Archbishop Bernard Hebda of Minneapolis in calling for decisive legislative action in solving the problem of gun violence in the United States. A reposting of then Cardinal Robert Prevost of a tweet by Democratic Senator Chris Murphy dated October 2, 2017, resurfaced in the news. To my colleagues, your cowardice to act cannot be whitewashed by thoughts and prayers. None of this ends unless we do something to stop it. On this side of the Rockies, in my own archdiocese, to which I now refer as Avignon by the Bay, a not too hidden reference to an era of anti-popes who resided outside of Rome, there has been near silence about the atrocity that occurred on August 27th at Annunciation Church that took the lives of 2 children and injured 14 other children and 3 adults. I saw one posting on Threads which quoted Archbishop Cordileone asking people to pray for the victims, their families, and the perpetrator. A visit to the sfarchdiocese.org website reveals no further statement from the Archbishop or any call for legislative action to address the pandemic of weapons as characterized by the Pope. What has appeared is an article written by Patrick Madrid of Right-Wing Relevant Radio. The article, posted on August 29th, is entitled, "Why They Mock Thoughts and Prayers." When I discovered this article, I was outraged. First of all, this article is based on a lie. No one is mocking prayer. This is another outrageous ploy by MAGA folks to deflect and distract from the great disaster which is the Donald Trump second presidency. It is also a heartless, soulless, evil attempt to deflect from the reality that guns are the greatest threat to the survival of children to adulthood in the United States today. It does not surprise me that this would be the route Archbishop Cordileone would take following upon the atrocity that occurred at Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis on August 27th. Following the shooting in Half Moon Bay in January 2023, Archbishop Cordileone posted a badly prepared 38-second video in which he blamed our godless society for the shooting. He said nothing about the ready access to guns in our society. The deep divide between Pope Leo and the Archbishop of San Francisco continues to grow wider and wider. Posting an article that focuses on an imaginary attack on prayer rather than on the pandemic of guns that results in the blood of innocent schoolchildren is beyond tone deaf. It is sick. It is perverted. It shows a lack of moral courage and a broken moral compass. No person should occupy the place of bishop who is so morally blind and corrupt. Back when Salvatore Cordileone was first installed as Archbishop of San Francisco, I said that Cordileone was acting entirely at the behest of Cardinal Burke, who had been Salvatore's mentor and North Star. Burke served on the Vatican's Committee for Bishops and was solely responsible for placing Salvatore at one of the most prominent archdioceses in the Catholic Church, an archdiocese that runs a major seminary. Taking control of this archdiocese and seminary was a great coup for Raymond Cardinal Burke, who was working to reestablish the Church in the pre-Vatican II era. This plan was foiled with the election of Pope Francis, who removed Burke from the places of power in the Vatican. Burke has since passed the age of 75, forcibly retiring him from any diocesan or ecclesiastical position. Burke no longer has any power in the Church or any claim to any church property as he would have had as head of any diocese. Having lost his lifeline to prominence, Archbishop Cordileone has transitioned to a new audience of one, Tim Bush of the pro-Trump, anti-Francis, now anti-Leo, Napa Institute. Cordileone relies on the financial support of Bush, the Napa Institute, and its cronies to keep the lifeblood pumping for his Benedict XVI Institute. It is my theory that the B16 Institute is more than just a playpen for Salvatore and his buddies to prance around in their damask and lace ecclesiastical drag. The Benedict XVI Institute is the future Cordileone retirement home. The problem is that once Salvatore reaches the age of 75, in another 6 years, he will no longer be able to use the seminary as the home base for B16. The Archbishop Emeritus will have to relocate his institute. The former Archbishop's house, located on the seminary property in Menlo Park, was transformed into a classical Catholic G.K. Chesterton school, an indoctrination center for the Catholic Hitler youth. Salvatore is going to need a new home, and Tim Bush's Napa winery estate may be the ideal place on which to settle his backward-facing Benedict XVI Institute. The Archbishop is well aware that the Raymond Burke plot to re-enslave the Vatican in 1955 is a flop, and the future of the MAGA monarchy is looking very dark. The clock is ticking. Archbishop Cordileone is walking a tightrope by keeping Tim Bush and his MAGA Republican friends satisfied without blatantly renouncing Pope Leo in the same manner as did Bishop Strickland with Pope Francis. The Cordileone method of undermining Pope Leo's mission is covert and passive-aggressive. The Archbishop does not openly oppose Pope Leo's acts or words, but he shows minimal cooperation with the Vatican. There is nothing on the Archdiocesan website about the season of creation recently initiated by the Pope. Cordileone's sins are more those of omission rather than commission. Like the rest of MAGA, Salvatore distracts from his omissions by publishing the whining screeds of MAGA trolls like Patrick Madrid. Regardless of how much or little attention this video receives, I'm going to make neither promises nor predictions about if or when I may post another video. My last few videos say all I have to say on the subject of the obvious split between Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone and the Vatican. Perhaps I may or may not choose to comment on future nonsense coming out of the San Francisco Chancery. But one thing is clear. As long as Salvatore Cordileone occupies the cathedra of the See of San Francisco, the faithful who live in one of the most beautiful parts of the planet will continue to wander the hills like sheep without a true shepherd until the man resigns.
Persecutra regionem, cogere